I'd love the chance. I would love the chance to have a 69-minute eargasm with Jake the Snake Roberts and see what the hell came out of that.
This is Ryan O'Regan, the real or deal, typical host of Jabronis United, Tales from the Film Set, occasional actor, photographer, bartender, a courier sometimes. I got too many jobs, way too many jobs. But one thing I haven't been able to do in a long time that I'm actually taking the opportunity to do now is actually talk to people, do some interviewing, reporting, whatever you want to call it, but really just having some downtime with people who I personally want to talk to, have loved talking to in the past, would like to talk to in the future. And yeah, I may seem a little low key, but you'd be surprised the kinds of stories you can get from people, just like the person I'm about to introduce to you. Now, for those of you who are in the wrestling zeitgeist, you are pretty familiar with this person, I'm sure, not just from a visual standpoint, but from an auditory standpoint. He is one of the best mic workers in our generation to go ahead, get in the ring, say what he needs to say, whether it be controversial or not, and he can actually take a good hit. Ladies and gentlemen, the quintessential stud muffin himself of ECW, Mr. Joel Gertner. Joel, how are you this evening?
I am doing great. Thank you for the intro. I don't know, those are really kind words, and I'm honored and I'm humble, and I hope I can live up to it here in this chat. I appreciate everything you said, especially because it came from Ryan O'Regan, who is about to interview. Well, well, well. It is I, the lyrical miracle, the sexual, intellectual, the cunning linguist, and the quintessential stud muffin. Joel, I was giving it to this one chick so good, she didn't know whether to urinate, defecate, ejaculate, scream, yell, or squeal. And then I stopped, remembering I had an appointment to talk with my dude at Real or Deal, Gertner.
Joel, seriously, how do you come up with this? Like, where did your mind go that you're able to come up with the limericks, the rhymes? Like, you have the mind of like a rapper, and yet the dirtiness of it, the controversialness of it, it always seeps in. It's like how are you able to pull that off and not like get smacked all the time?
I've been rhyming, and I've been very kind of musical and poetic and lyrical, and I've enjoyed creative writing, and going back to school. I mean, whether it's poetry or whatever, I've always enjoyed just rhyming. When I was a baby, when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, something like that, when I was in elementary school, I had a rhyming dictionary, and I actually, in my spare time, I'm an only child. You would have never guessed, but um, I had this rhyming dictionary, and I would put it to good use. And so I've been rhyming my whole life, well over 40 years. Yeah. And then when it comes to as far as the filth, I mean, I just, I grew up, some of my heroes were like Howard Stern, of the time, just shock jocks, Andrew Dice Clay, who had his own nursery rhymes, and guys like that, Sam Kinison, and I just, Morton Downey Jr. I mean, just a ton of people that I looked up to, and a ton of people that were kind of a little bit counterculture, a little bit deviant, a little bit, just outside of the mainstream. And, I just loved stuff on TV or whatever it was that if it was TV, for example, and this is how I got into wrestling, is that I loved stuff that you couldn't see anywhere else. I loved stuff that was different. I loved stuff that was, against the grain. And so yeah, so that's, it's just, admiring the counterculture and that kind of, other wavelength and that kind of just different way of looking at things, and admiring all those people, and also just always being into coming up with kind of the most creative, whether it rhymes or not. I mean, if it rhymes, then, that's a bonus and I can turn it into a Gertnerism, but I can still use something in a promo if it doesn't rhyme, because, in wrestling, my heroes go back to like Paul Heyman, Jim Cornette, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Classy Freddie Blassie, and just, all the classic guys, Jimmy Hart, and just everybody from the 80s that I grew up with. And my goal was to one day have my name be uttered by any wrestling fan in that company. And some people do hold me in that regard, and at that level of esteem. And like I said to you, I would tell them or anybody, that's because that's been my life's goal. It's very, very humbling, and I don't take it for granted. And with that kind of, when people look at you through the lens that you've always hoped they might look at you through, it comes with great responsibility to be able to, you know, just be good to the industry. And because you got a break, you got a chance, you're living the dream, just to give back, especially to the next generation of people who are coming up into the industry.
Actually, funny enough that you talk about like being noticed and being seen, because um, the way we met, I swear to God, I did not even know it was you when I met you, because you really, I'd say, matured and changed from those days. I mean, obviously the mentality is still there, but no longer is it just the big guy with like the neck brace or anything. You've matured, Joel Gertner, in a sense.
I appreciate it. Well, did we met on set?
Yeah, we met back in 2019, summer 2019, um, in Staten Island while we were working on King of Staten Island.
Yeah,
So back when they took that, what was it? It's the Staten Island Yankees Theater.
yeah.
Yeah, it's there. It's the stadium, and we were all just there rooting for whatever game was going on and whoever was talking. And Pete and his people would be in the audience. By the way, did you ever get to see the movie?
I did. I don't think I made the cut for that one. They gave me a cross at the ticket window at Will Call, and I
Hmm.
crossed with both of our heroes. Me and somebody else crossed with them, but I don't think it made the edit, the final edit. So cool movie nonetheless. What I did gain that day, I met you. I met another guy who is acting, and he's in the wrestling field. Rock star Rob Spinelli, who's now down in Florida training with Devon Dudley. We became good friends as well. So, just like every set, I met a handful of good people, yourself included, and I gained a ton of experience that's taken me, along these last 5 years or so, to where, I have made the cut and been shown on, Law and Order, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Ray Donovan, Godfather of Harlem, stuff like that. Sometimes you make, some days you're the windshield and some days you're the bug, and it could have, and sometimes it's your fault and sometimes it's not your fault. It's, so it's acting, especially background acting, which is where I'm kind of immersing myself right now, starting out as background, which can be dangerous. I think there's a bit of there's a stigma that I think has been disproven enough that it's not kind of 100% set in stone. But a lot of the time they tell you, don't be background, or at least don't stay background too long.
Some people will go ahead and complain that's like if you're doing background and you don't actually make the effort to do anything else, you're gonna end up with this kind of visage where it's like you just get lost, even with doing auditions or anything like that. You need other work to show that you have chops. Although I do know some people that have made a living off of being background workers, whether it's because they have a car that always gets utilized in films, or they have that cop uniform. Like my friend Debbie, she's got like every time I see her, she's always like on SVU, FBI, whatever show may be going on in New York, just as a regular patrol person. So I mean, if it's nice work if you can get it, but I'd say for someone like you, someone who has like the verbal chops and the cadence to actually go ahead and do more, yes, absolutely, strive for it. Don't get linchpinned into like the easy work, you know?
Appreciate it. So that's what I'm trying to do is kind of advance myself and make further strides outside of wrestling in just general mainstream acting for TV or whatnot. And we'll see where that takes me. But like I say, meeting people, gaining experience is so important.
Now, as for the acting itself, was that something that you wanted to do all the way back when you were younger and starting to get into wrestling, or is it something that kind of built up after performance for like ECW or One Night Stand with WWE or any of the stuff that you've done in the wrestling industry? Is it something that's birthed from that, or is it more of like I've always just wanted to perform and wrestling was just the first way of doing it?
No, I was a drama guy in high school and middle school. Did plays and musicals all throughout school, and was a performer and did a dozen plays and musicals or more before I was ever old enough to get into the wrestling business, which I got into early enough anyway at 17. But in my earlier teenage years, did a ton of musicals and a ton of plays, and went to school with and worked on stage alongside Dan Fogler and Bonnie Somerville, Johnny Giacalone, and a bunch of people who've done a lot of great things and gotten a lot of work in Hollywood projects. So yeah, no, always been just an all around performer and have been acting since well before wrestling.
I love that. I love that. There's a kinship there because I started with like the high school musicals. No, not trademark, but yeah, it's nice when you actually get to start early and then you find an outlet. For the longest time, I didn't have one. I was like, I'd say maybe late 20s before I was like, okay, let me at least do stand up comedy if I'm not going to get any roles, and then everything just worked on from there. Um, have you tried stand up? I mean, the way you come off lyrically, it's like you'd be pretty damn good, I think.
I've worked under Sir Robert Levy, or Reverend Bob Levy.
Oh,
I
Bob,
confuse him with
yes.
a wrestling gimmick. I confuse him with somebody else for a second with his gimmick. But Reverend Bob Levy, I've worked with him. And when I was living in the city a while back, when I was younger, I would get some stage time at like Stand Up New York or whatever. And I would work. I think one night I was on the same bill as Jim Norton, way down on the, undercard guy, kind of, just one of the people who kind of, I guess you tell them you'll give them $30, $50, whatever it is for a videotape of your performance. And you let them know that you have some kind of experience so that they know you won't fall flat on your face. And maybe, I dropped the wrestling thing because it was after I'd already been doing wrestling. So got up on stage. And then later that night, Jim Norton got up and he was on the same bill back around the time that he was in that Spider-Man movie. So, and I think even later that night, I think Kevin Nealon came by. I think he was living in the area also, and he came by and had some stuff maybe that he wanted to, work out in front of a live crowd. And so, yeah, a little bit here and there, but really a little bit. I mean, the stuff that I've done, like I say, I've been up there with legends and greats and masters. But at the same time, it's been only maybe a handful or so, maybe two handfuls of occasions that I've done professional stand-up comedy, to for paying ticket holders in front of a live audience, and I've always loved it, and it's something I'll probably go back to. Um, yeah, it's not so far removed from some of the stuff I do as a wrestling manager.
Awesome, dude. If you ever do anything like around here, whether it be New York or even just down here in Jersey at Stress Factory, I'm buying a ticket. I'll be front row. You can roast me like Don Rickles. I will not give a damn. Now,
Appreciate it.
speaking of traveling, um, I did see that you were one of the lucky many, unlike myself, that was able to go to WrestleMania down in Philly this year. How was it? How was it going to number 40 of the greatest show on earth?
Yeah, WrestleMania is always intense. It's always a lot of fun. It's a big show. There's a crazy electric atmosphere. You've got a global audience. You've got people that, this is their annual vacation, so it's there's a lot on the line for everybody, even for the fans. I mean, if I started out as a fan, I started out going to conventions, getting autographs, getting my picture taken with. I started out, as a tape trader, and some of my customers became, famous or even were famous at the time. I mean, I was selling tapes to Mick Foley when he was in WCW. But and again, so Chris Canyon, who I came up in the business with here in the New York City scene before he became big, when we were even before, actually before I met him as a contemporary, both coming up 31, 32 years ago in the city. About a year before that, he wasn't in the business yet, I don't think. Neither was I, because I was probably about 16, 15. And I remember selling him a videotape, I forget which one, at the Meadowlands. We were both at a WCW show at the Meadowlands, and I remember this was before cell phones, but I let him know in advance what seat that I'd be in. And I remember passing off a videotape to him at the Meadowlands. So just, I can put myself kind of in a fan's frame of mind, and I can let you know, especially because I saw the show from the stands, from the seats. I can let you know that the atmosphere is just as charged, and there's just as much on the line as far as emotional investment, because these fans, like I say, it's their annual, it's what they save up for, it's what they use their 7 days for, it's what they take away from other things to scrimp for in some cases. And whether it is that or not, I mean, everybody just knows that they're about to see the show of the year. So yeah, I was in Philly, and I went both nights. um I worked two shows on the Friday. I worked ECW Arena, 2300 Arena, for a Friday afternoon show, then did a convention for about 2, 3 hours, and then worked the Friday night show, which was me wrestling Fonzie, Bill Alfonso. So I managed in the afternoon, did a meet and greet in the late afternoon, early evening, wrestled at night, and yeah, and then the next day we were at Mania, and then the day after that we were at Mania, and it's very intense. It's just, as far as Mania goes, I only did, the two actual, shows, the Saturday night and the Sunday night. But everybody knows there's like a half week or a week of events leading up to it, and it's just the whole city is just plastered with it, just covered with it. And it's just everybody because they've got the stadium and the arena on lock. The Flyers are out of town. The Sixers are out of town. There's no competition. There's no concerts. There's nothing going on in the former nation's capital other than professional wrestling for days. And it's just it's just everybody's amped, everything's amplified, and it's just all systems good. It's if you've never been to WrestleMania, if you're a wrestling fan, if you want to go to WrestleMania, no matter where it is, and you've never been, this is not me, it's not a WWE versus AEW thing. If you could have gone to AEW at Wembley, you should have done that too. But if Mania, again, even if it's not near you, even if you make it a vacation, it's really worth it. It's a lot of fun. And if you want to be a wrestling fan, I mean, those are the nights to do it.
No, absolutely. And I'd say this meant probably more so to you and your brothers in ECW, not only because it was a Philly show, which I can't remember the last time that WrestleMania was in there for, um, anything good. I mean, I remember the last time when they had the Royal Rumble there and everyone was throwing stuff into the ring. Obviously, people were upset. But considering it's Philly, considering Paul Heyman was being inducted into the Hall of Fame, there was the ECW show that went on that day, and obviously the where you all would perform was just down the street from where all the WrestleMania festivities was going on. How did it feel to have like that air of ECW around? Because obviously, I would want to say more so than any other brand, that is your homestead. That is home for everybody, whether you're a Dudley, whether you're Taz, whether you're Joel Gertner, that has got to be a homestead for you. And so, how does it feel just like walking through the streets knowing that, you know, yeah, I get to come back?
It's great. Um, I love being in Philly for anything, for any amount of time, whether it's 6 to 12 hours, or whether it's 4 days, 5 days, or whether it's back when I was living there during the ECW days for some of it. Um, I love Philly. I love it. It's just a great city. It's a great wrestling town. If you know where to eat, the food is great. It's just
Oh, just to interject, Geno's, Pat's, or some place better? What do you have?
someplace better. I mean, the former Tony Luke's, which is now Tony and Nick's, I think. They just changed their name relatively recently, but right there by the arena, right, like within walking distance. And that, listen, every third Saturday, in the mid to late 90s, that's where I ate. That was my sustenance, and I grew up on it. And you can't do any better than a good Philly cheesesteak. I mean, I like a pepperoni pizza steak, with onions, sharp provolone, um, sharp wit is the way I order it. Let me get a pepperoni pizza sharp wit. And the sharp is the sharp provolone, and the wit is with the fried onions. And
Joey,
that's my go-to, man. That's my weakness.
although, okay, just on a side, I do also have to say, outside of the acting, outside of the wrestling stuff, I am also very impressed with your personal health journey that you've been going through over the past few years, and how you've, slimmed yourself down and whatnot. I'm just been put on one by my doctor, so if you're, do you have any tips or tricks for any of us big bone boys out there that may be like helpful in some way? Like I'm hearing about the cheesesteaks, and I want a cheesesteak really bad, but it's like I gotta stop myself. So, how do you control any kind of like little thing that might like get into your head where it's like eat me, and you just gotta say no?
I don't know if I'm the right person to ask, because whenever I lose weight, I always find it. I'm good at losing it. I'm not good at keeping it off. Um, but the part of me that's good at losing it, I mean, I'm not the picture. I'm not Mr. Olympia, so I don't want to come off as a hypocrite giving, health and diet and lifestyle, wellness lifestyle advice. But um, calorie restriction to an extent is important. You don't want to starve yourself. But for example, right now I'm 256. So there's a kind of scale where they say maybe 10 calories per pound. So to maintain, it would be about 2,560. So I'd say to lose weight, you'd want to probably be closer to about 2,000, maybe even less. There are people who get by on 1,200, and I've done that before. I'm not there now, and I probably don't need to be, that far down as far as calorie restriction. So you don't need to do 1,200, but I only eat a couple times a day now. I do intermittent fasting. Even before I knew it was a thing, I was kind of doing it anyway, because I just kind of skip breakfast. So whether it's a early lunch or a regular lunch or a late lunch, lunch is usually going to be the first thing I eat, and then I eat dinner. And I don't eat dessert, candy, chocolate, chips every day. I don't eat them a lot. I enjoy them when I do, but many nights it's just, or days it's just lunch and dinner. That's it. When I'm losing weight and I'm being good about it, it's a lot of water. I don't drink soda. Even when I'm not drinking water, yeah, even when I'm not drinking water, I'm maybe drinking iced tea, but I'm not really drinking like carbonated. Like, I'm staying away from soda. I have it every very kind of infrequently. And I am my vehicle. I am my mode of transportation. I'm a city kid and I'm a walker. I try to get 10, 12, 15,000 steps in a day. So I'm trying my best. If I'm eating 2,000 calories instead of 1,200 calories, I'm trying my best to burn off an extra 400 calories every day so that it's kind of splitting the difference. It's about your net calories, because calories are energy. So, you got a guy like Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps is swimmer thin, and Michael Phelps is having chocolate chip pancakes and bacon in the morning, and he's eating 10,000 calories throughout the day because he's in the pool for X many hours burning it off. Yeah, to an extent, that's just it. You know what I mean? Don't take in, don't eat 4,000 calories and sit around and not go anywhere. Don't drink soda and high sugar drinks all day. And stuff like that. I mean, just kind of common sense. I've got a buddy, one of my best friends, Sebastian. He's kind of my life coach when it comes to getting fit and being in better shape. And what he always says is it's not magic, it's math. And it really kind of is that simple. If you do the right things and stay with it and don't, if you have the discipline, you'll see results.
So it is more of a logical thing. It's like, A plus B does equal C to an extent. Like,
For most people, I mean, some people, whether it's genetics or whether it's something about their metabolism, some people are going to need more help than that. You know what I mean? Like, some people need to be on a certain medicine maybe to help out, see a doctor and get different advice. It doesn't work for everybody. Everybody's different, but by and large, those are kind of the basics, the fundamentals. But again, I've been like 280, 285 pounds before, and I'm only about 5'9", 5'9 and a half, and I have very little muscle on me and a very medium kind of frame. So, I've been very much out of shape and kind of bloated and kind of, there are times when I haven't been in my best shape. And then, there was, my high school graduation, or I think maybe when I was going off to college, when I was about to, when I was turning 18 and about to go off to college, I was down at about 158. So at this height or so, I've been 158 pounds and I've been closer to 285. And right now I'm closer to 285 than 158. But I'm hoping to change that. So, if you go on my TikTok, which is at Quintessential Stud Muffin, if you go on there right now, in recent days, since I got back from Philly, kind of over the last 3 or 4 days, you'll see like maybe 3 lunches that are towards the top there on my homepage, and it's a lot of grilled chicken, spinach. Today I had a tomato vegetable soup with cauliflower, broccoli, and carrot. It's just a ton of stuff like that. Don't be afraid to, lean protein, eat your vegetables when you can have fruit. It's you don't have to go overboard. I mean, but don't indulge every day and don't indulge 4 days a week. Like again, like Sebastian says, for most people, for many people, it'll work if you just think about it as it's not magic, it's math.
I have to keep telling myself that. I know that much. I do say I have been losing weight. Apparently, I lost like 39 pounds in the first month,
Good for
but I'm
you.
like, I also started at a much higher plateau. I was like, you say their highest was 280. My highest, which up to this point was lower 400s.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, you wouldn't tell it by looking at me, but it's there. So, but I
No,
can
that
say,
if you're
you're
coming
right.
from the 400s, then yeah, you look great.
Everything. It's like you do notice something is different, something is changing, but it's not necessarily going to be the easiest thing in the world. But you've always been someone that I could see that was like, wow, okay. I mean, there was someone who was like, a big guy on TV, and yet they're still thriving even without having to be looked at as like just the big guy. You can do so much more. You are so much more. And that in itself is inspiring. I think not just to myself, especially since we're like locals, but to a lot of other maybe younger talent out there. Like you say, you want to go ahead and bring up the next generation. Doing what you're doing and being in the right frame of mind about it is probably one of the best things anybody could see. That's part of the reason I wanted to bring you on. And not funny, obviously, but aside from the funny, there's also the inspiration. But uh, yeah, I always want to make sure you get that kind of platform. Now, as touching as everything has been, Do want to get into a little bit of yuck yuck here. So, did you get to see anybody from the old days while you were traveling down in Philly at WrestleMania? Did you see Bubba or Tommy or any of them?
Saw them both. That nighttime show that I was telling you about was an ECW tribute show. It was Battleground Championship Wrestling's, I think.
Around after, like they were just like hanging out, or were they
They
all
went
like
to so they
on
went
one
to
day?
Hall of Fame after. They were there early in the show. They
Right.
opened the show, I think, because they had to get to Hall of Fame. So they were at both places that night. But I saw them very quickly. And yeah, I saw Blue Meanie, who I love to see, great friend of mine. Yeah, Devon Dudley, Jason Knight, who I spent a lot of time with when I was living in Waterbury, Connecticut. Um, Gosh, just a ton of people. Fonzie, Todd Gordon, Super Crazy, Scorpio. I saw Juventud Guerrera, and got to catch up with people that I see through Battleground. Got to meet Lindsay Dorado, who I've spoken with a lot online and stuff, but I don't think I had ever had the privilege of meeting. Got to see some Battleground regulars. I saw Brian Kendrick and but yeah, as far as the ECW guys, always great seeing them and got to see, gosh, a couple dozen guys. I mean, it was a real kind of reunion, and it was just great to it's like no time passes when you see all those guys. It's you just pick up where you left off.
Now, how does it feel knowing that when you look at these guys that you worked with, late '90s into early 2000s, that whole extreme generation, Attitude Era would be what it was. How does it feel knowing that when you see these guys and you look at yourself and you realize you have aged so much better than some of them? Like, my God, man.
I appreciate that. That's kind of you to say.
I
Um,
mean, really, when you think about it, you think about all the stuff that they've gone through physically, and over time, that starts to show. And yet, thankfully, even though you had your hits in, you've still been able to like move well and function well. It's like, do you ever just dab each other about, it's like, how you doing, old man? It's like, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting to that because we do these reunions every once in a while. Like I say, this was Battleground's second one, so they did one last year, and it just seems like even before that, like every 1, 3, 5 years, whenever a promoter wants to, it seems like there's a big ECW themed show. So it's almost like a high school reunion, and yeah, everybody kind of, it's not so much that we needle each other; it's more that we're all kind of just disparaging ourselves and just get self-deprecating. Just a lot of us are having the fun with ourselves at our own expense to make our friends laugh. But yeah, man, yeah, for sure. It's along those lines. Yeah, it's getting. I mean, I was the baby. When I came into ECW in '95, it was 3 days after my 20th birthday. If I would have started the previous weekend, I would have started as a teenager. And like I say, I was the young one, and I was kind of the little brother, and I was the shy one backstage that speak when spoken to when I started out, and I was very much always kind of the youngest or one of the youngest ones on the roster. And now, this year I'll be 49, so it's not, none of us are babies, none of us are grasshoppers anymore. All of us have, I've been in the business almost 32 years. So all of us have, some sort of wisdom that we're bringing to the table, and none of us are wet behind the ears. But, when we get together, it's just, we just become kids again. Like I say, it's like a high school reunion.
No, that's lovely. I wish I had friends like that. I don't, obviously. I don't even talk to the people I go to high school with. Bastards. But enough about them. Um, so you talk about like being the baby and everything, and obviously from what I read, Shane Douglas was really like the first guy to like put you on for ECW wise, and um, did do you have like any kind of like a father son relationship with Shane, if that's the case, or like who would you say would be like your wrestling dad? Who would be the one that you say you imparted the most on you?
I admire Shane very much. I think Paul Heyman, honestly, I think I'm the original Paul Heyman guy in a way.
Ooh.
Yeah, I see Paul as my wrestling dad, as my wrestling big brother, as my wrestling teacher, as my wrestling coach, as my wrestling really I'm just a mentor and and he gave me my big break, you know. He gave me a chance and he gave me a platform. Um so him really he's the answer to your question. Um I'm the original Paul Heyman guy, man. I mean, in ECW when it was time for him not to be Paul Lee Dangerously anymore, when it was time for him to make that transition and be himself and be Paul Heyman and be an owner, not a manager, be authority and office, not a personality. I stepped in and kind of was a variation on a theme of Paulie Dangerously. I was that heel manager for the Dudleys. You know, he used to do color commentary for WCW on Turner Networks. Um, when he needed somebody to do color commentary with Joey Styles for TNN, he tapped me. Gosh, I mean, you know, he gave me the opportunity to work with Rick Rude, who he got to work with by managing him when he was in WCW. He named me the quintessential stud muffin, which is an homage to the universal heartthrob Austin Idol, who he managed early in his career.
Oh, that's
So
where it comes from.
yeah, so I just, you know, whether it's being kind of in what he did for WCW, he allowed me to do for him. And just whether it's that or that quintessential stud muffin nickname or any other unbelievable opportunity that he presented me with, any ball that he gave me the chance to run with, I'm, you know, if I'm not, I'm one of for sure. You know, obviously Dreamer, Taz, and Bubba, and a lot of guys, you know, who before ECW went national and global were really only kind of regional or local, New York City, Jersey, Philadelphia area. A lot of those guys are going to say the same thing, and they also are Paul Heyman guys. But I am just as much as any of them, and I think for sure, you know, he's my guru. Going back all the way to before I worked for him, before I ever met him. You know, like I say just earlier, as a fan, guys like him, Cornette, um, Lou Albano, Blassie, Bobby Heenan, Jimmy Hart, all of the great managers, J.J. Dillon, everybody in the 80s. But he was one because he was from the area, and I just kind of, he was somebody I could look at and say, maybe I can do this one day. What makes me, aside from being 10 years younger, what makes me different if I get a chance and if I can show that I have talent and that this is my calling, my passion, and this is what I'm made for? What makes me any lesser than? And I really looked at Paul as somebody that I could admire, aspire to, and look at as far as being able to achieve. Because if he did it, maybe I could do it. And then the ultimate irony is that he's the one that I asked for a job in ECW and he granted it to me. So it absolutely, you know, Paul Heyman for sure.
That made me tear up, man. It's like I wish I had somebody like that. I wish I had that go-to person like you had that really helped bring you up. And obviously, it pays off. I mean, you see where it's done with him, and I don't think there's a person that he hasn't touched that hasn't turned to gold. Maybe Curtis Axel, but outside of that, I don't think anybody else has been like uh, you know failed due to Paul imparting himself on anybody. So very fortunate, very fortunate. I am jealous. If I ever meet the man, um, I'd have a lot of questions. Like I would always want to be like, I would want to be a manager too. Actually, come to think of it, just from your own personal perspective, to be a manager, just in general, whether it be ECW days or even try to be a manager now, do you have to be a heel to be a manager? Because I can't remember the last time, for the life of me, that there was a manager who everybody enjoyed or everybody liked seeing partnered with somebody. It's always a heel manager, some guy who's always the smarmy enough, sneaky enough, conniving enough to do what's best for his client. Does that go part and parcel with the job?
Yeah, I think being a manager is better suited for being a heel, because the manager is not getting in the ring himself or herself, not doing the physical labor, not exercising any skill between the ropes. They're just talking a good game, they're hype, and then they have somebody else, a liege, a charge, a client, go in there and execute on their behalf. So I think that's why most of the successful managers that you've seen have been heels. But there have been some great babyface managers, throughout time. Arnold Skolin really got over well in his time as Bob Backlund's manager. Captain Lou Albano eventually turned face and was a babyface. So many people know him even better as a babyface, maybe due to when they were born, or gosh, a lot of and then Miss Elizabeth for sure. Jimmy Hart was a babyface for a while.
Well,
Um,
he's like one of the biggest
it's
flip floppers. Just give him a microphone. He doesn't care who he's talking about.
Jimmy Hart's awesome. Yeah. Jimmy Hart can hype it up however he wants, and whoever he wants, and he'll still get over. And more importantly, he'll get them over. Um, but yeah, it's been done. Um, Growing up, I loved heel man. Growing up, I loved heels in general. Heels and freaks. I loved guys like Jake Roberts, Piper, Ventura, heels who could talk, heels who had psychology down. And then on the freak end of things, where you have like real life human cartoons, just because you couldn't see it anywhere else other than wrestling. I loved guys like Missing Link, Kamala, George the Animal Steel. And I was fortunate enough to have Kamala on my podcast, and it's one of the more riveting. It's a really deep dive, and it's a great interview that I had with Kamala a few years ago.
Wait. Kamala can talk?
Kamala, yes, the person behind Kamala can talk. Yeah, it would have been if it was just an hour of it wouldn't have been the same. It would have been. I would have loved it, but if he
Oh, yeah,
was
no, if
slapping
he had
his
stayed
belly
in
and
character
whatnot.
the whole damn time, that would have been perfect. But
No,
and
we had a really great
your
chat.
podcast, what is that? 69-minute
69-minute eargasm. Yeah, you can find it
eargasm.
wherever you find
Eargasm.
podcasts.
I
69
was like, I
minute
was seeing the words,
eargasm.
but I was like, how do you pronounce that?
Yeah. Seek it out. Seek out the 69-minute eargasm. We've had a bunch of cool people on, but seek out the episode with Kamala, because we really, really, it was pretty intense. There's a lot that you can glean from it. He talks about how Bill Watts, in his mind, was a better pay guy than Vince McMahon was. How on a certain metric, he made better money in Mid South than he made in the WWF. It's a really, really interesting, and it's very layered, and it's very thorough, and it's just and again, from a man who on TV, when you see him, he doesn't even speak, or at least he doesn't speak English. And we talked for quite a while, and he was really, really generous, not just with his time, but with just kind of, it was really heartfelt and thought out and thoughtful, and it's a really, really good listen.
I'm gonna listen to it just to see what his voice actually sounds like. That's gonna be intriguing enough just to get me in. Um, but yes, so you have your 69-minute orgasm. Um, is that pretty much like just interview back and forth sort of deal too, or have you talked about any of the more current events going on in wrestling?
We do that. It depends on the guest. It depends on the flow. But certain guests, I've asked them what was better 10, 15 years ago. What do you like about now? Where do you think the business will be in 10, 15 years? We do stuff like that. But everyone, I talk about everybody. I ask everybody if they don't mind, talk about your childhood, talk about growing up, Talk about what wrestling meant to you when you were a kid. Talk about before you got in the business and were getting trained for it. Were you a fan? What was the first wrestling you saw on TV? What was the first wrestling you saw live? The beginning of every interview starts that way. Everybody is unique. Everybody is a fingerprint. Everybody is a snowflake. No two people are the same, but I want to start every interview the same. And then where it goes from there is just completely just based on flow. So, we'll talk to some people and we'll get more about the past, less about the future, less about the present, more about the present. We'll talk about people's hobbies. We'll talk about what people are like outside the ring. We just every interview winds up being completely different, but they all do start out the same way because I think it's interesting to see how a world of different people, all radically diverse, all completely unique, they all fall into this thing called pro wrestling, this performance art that you can't label because to label it, you negate it. Because who's to say what is and what isn't pro wrestling? Who's to say what pro wrestling is or isn't or should or shouldn't be? But yet, fans who are devout, fans who are really, really locked in on wrestling, they love nothing more than to discuss wrestling. And that's what makes it so appealing to discuss is that there's no right answer. You go to somebody for their take on pro wrestling, nobody is God in pro wrestling. Everybody, and we're seeing it now with the departure of Vince McMahon, even Vince McMahon himself, everybody has their own take, does it their own way, does it differently, but nobody is the supreme commander of it. Everybody is just a bird. They do wrestling their way. They sing their song not because they have the answer. They sing not because they have the answer, but because they have a song. So WWE right now is singing their song. Tony Khan is singing his song. Impact TNA is making their music. And everybody, like, just like a band, just like an individual artist, everybody is putting on their own concert, their own production, because they have that creativity. And so it's just, and again, in the interviews, I mean, that's the way I handle it is I try to learn what makes a certain person tick. I try to listen very carefully to their responses, and I kind of let who they are and what they might prefer talking about be kind of a catalyst and lead me into the next questions.
I feel like I should be taking notes.
You're
But
good.
that's
You're
not doing
no,
bad.
no, you're fine. You're fine.
I know I'm gonna be a little rusty. It's been a while since I've actually gotten to like talk to somebody one on one who, it wasn't just a porn star trying to show off what they're doing up here. So it's like, it's refreshing.
This is
But
no, you're awesome, dude. That's why, dude, I don't do a lot of. I'm so far. I recorded a podcast yesterday, but it's the first one I've done in many weeks, many months. It's unfortunately I haven't been disciplined enough to be regular enough with the podcast, and I'm trying to just like I'm trying to get in better shape and stay in better shape. I'm also trying to be more consistent with the podcast so that it can kind of find its footing and kind of get up and crawl and then walk and then run and then fly. And I'm trying to do that. And I recorded yesterday, but I don't. So I'm so far behind on stuff like I got tapped to do the Sabu audiobook, the audio version of his book that he did with Kenny Casanova. So I have that voice work to do. I have the background acting going on. I have a couple of other gigs. There's a lot going on, and I am so far behind in recording my own podcast that I host with other people as the guest that I don't do a lot of guest spots on podcasts. And I probably, when you asked if I'd be on the show, I probably told you I'm not really, nothing against you, but I'm not looking to do that at all in this moment. But because it was you asking, and because I know you're a good dude, and because I know that you're going to put on a good show, I don't want to say I made an exception, but again, it's just so busy when you have your own podcast. I don't do it enough, and I still kind of feel overwhelmed sometimes finding the time. But when you reached out, I know you're the man from having met you, and so in a heartbeat, I said yes.
I promised myself I wouldn't cry. I really did.
It's funny.
I appreciate that, Joel. I really do. And again, this being the first time in a long time, it's been such a great enjoyment to actually not just talk with you, but to actually hear what you have to say, hear your perspective on things, and not just necessarily on wrestling too. Everyone's very more multicultural nowadays. Back in the day, if you were talking to a wrestler, you would have to only talk about, like, what's your plans for the next match, or how you gonna get revenge on that guy, and yeah, and have to stay in the character of it. Now everyone is so much more than just the character they portray. They're so versatile, and it's nice to see those kinds of sides and angles. Although I will say, as far as your podcast goes, I think maybe it might help if there's a particular goal that you have set in mind. So I'll throw this out to you, because like I've thrown out ideas to people in the past. Who is the one person that you have never interviewed before, never had a conversation with them in personal or private, never, that you would want to have on the cast?
So I've spoken to this person. I've met them because they worked very sporadically with ECW, just an appearance and then gone, an appearance, and then they weren't regulars with ECW, but they've done a couple of shots, and I've seen them then, and I've seen them at conventions. So my favorite wrestler of all time, Jake the Snake Roberts. It's not that I've never met him. It's not that I've never spoken with him, a little bit here, a little bit there. As far as a real deep dive interview, and I don't know, he has been so open, whether it's with DDP helping him out and everything, all of the DDP productions that have been done, going back to Beyond the Mat, every documentary, A&E, whatever it is, he's been so open about his life so much that I don't know that there's anything new that I could tap into that Jake Roberts hasn't already discussed or divulged. But I'd love the chance. I would love the chance to have a 69-minute eargasm with Jake the Snake Roberts and see what the hell came out of that.
That's nice. That's good. It's one thing to go ahead and get somebody that's like, when they're striking hot and everyone wants to talk to them, and it's the same story that they give to all the time. It's another thing when you have somebody who everyone thinks they know, everyone thinks they have it all figured out by now because of everything they've heard up to this point. But when you really just want to go ahead and chip away at that one missing gold nugget that no one else has found yet, but it's there. It's there. You just got to keep striking at it. That is real gold. That's pure gold. Nothing foolish. And dude, if with any of my sources, if I ever get the chance to talk to Jake the Snake and just put something in his ear, I'm going to tell him 69-minute eargasm.
I've had DDP on. My wife is a publicist, and she was working on a project, a film that he was in, and I wound up being part of his media junket, and on his media day, he did speak with us for a little while. So I have done a little mini eargasm, not quite 69 minutes, maybe closer to half that time, with DDP. And so I think I know how to get a hold of Jake. It's just it's about timing, and it's about, I haven't reached out to him about it yet. I don't know what I'm waiting for. I never really kind of, there's a bunch of people already on the short list. Like I say, I mean, I've got 10, 20, 30 people that have said, yeah, okay, let's do it. And it's kind of about finding the time. So I got, it's not out yet. We just recorded it yesterday, but and I'm kind of teasing, leaving a little bit of mystery on social media
Keep going,
about who
please.
it is. But I will tell you that our next one that's coming out in a matter of a few days or so is going to be with WWF WWE Hall of Famer, 1996 class Hall of Famer, the unpredictable Johnny Rods. Johnny Rods is going to be our guest on the next Eargasm, which I recorded with him yesterday. And there's a couple of dozen more luminaries and legends where that came from. There's a lot of people that I'm waiting to speak with, and and again, we were talking about health and wellness and diet and fitness before. The Eargasm, like I say, is no different. It's a project that unfortunately I've been a little bit lax. I've been a little bit lackadaisical. I've kind of not had my foot on the pedal, and I think it's time to give it some gas and be more steady and consistent with putting out new episodes. So our first one in a bit, Johnny Rods, will be out very shortly.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to see how far you take this, and I want to make sure that you do get your Jake the Snake interview at least sometime. Maybe not within this year. Who knows? Because I know he's re-signed up with AEW, so he's still on with them. But I'm sure there's going to be times when he's in the area or they're not using him, because I don't even know if they're using him with Lance Archer anymore. To be honest, I don't know where he is in the back, but he's got the time. I would love to see you grab him. Pun intended, because we're talking about a snake. So, but well, I want that for you, Joe. I do. I do. But yeah, outside of that, I guess, is there anything coming up outside of 69-minute orgasm that you may want to go ahead and just shoot out there? Maybe a show to promote. Maybe you're going on someone else's show, something like that.
Sure, sure. I'm actually working more live events than usual in the next 2 or 3 months. Between early May, the first weekend in May, and 2 months later, the first weekend in July. There's about a 10-week period, and I'm working 5 of those weekends, and in the process of trying to fill some of the other 5, especially towards the back end of that window. So I'm trying to get a lot more work than I have in the last year or 2 or 3. Um, get back out there, stay active, stay relevant, all that good stuff. So I'm going out to Ohio for Dylan Hirschberger, who is an amazing individual. I met him and his grandfather in Pittsburgh at the Extreme Rising show, like let's call it 10 years ago. And Dylan was like, I don't know, 6, or I'm not sure at the time, little kid, and he was there with his grandfather. And I've since met Jonas, his grandfather, who has passed away. I've met his son, Joe, that's Dylan's dad. So they all were ECW fans. They're all wrestling fans. So that's a family where, and again, I take nothing for granted. And, when people know who you are, I expect, you to be a real human being and be somebody who can give back and, be somebody that, is somebody you could actually talk with like a real person. This is 3 generations of the Hirschberger family who hold me in high enough regard that they're bringing me in. Dylan and his dad promoting this show. It's Dylan's fundraiser. It's an autism awareness event. And so that's going to be the first weekend in May in Ohio. Jason Knight is restarting Assault Championship Wrestling, which I helped him out with. Was a part of in Connecticut in like 2000, 2001, around the time Mercedes Martinez is getting her career started out there in Waterbury. Talia Madison went on to become Velvet Sky, was getting started around that time. They were Jason students. Um, Gosh, I think it was for Assault Championship Wrestling, probably when she debuted, maybe on one of those shows. I think it was there that I gave her the name Mercedes Martinez. So
Wait, you gave her the name Mercedes Martinez?
named her, yeah. So Assault Championship Wrestling was out in Connecticut, let's call it 22, 23 years ago, a generation ago. And now they're starting up again. They're doing a show in New Jersey. That's going to be later in May. I think that's going to be late May. You can find it on social media, and what you're looking for is Assault Championship Wrestling. I think the name of the show is Equinox, and it's going to be in, gosh, I want to say Williamstown, New Jersey. Not sure exactly, but it's in May. Keep an eye out for it. So I'm doing a couple of shows in May, a couple of shows in the Midwest in June. And then that first weekend of July, I'm back at 2300 Arena, the old ECW Arena in Philly, for Battleground Championship Wrestling again. Me and my stable, the Sex with Your Next X Express. Um,
That's a lot of extras.
we just WrestleMania weekend, we won the match that we needed to win. We got our 1 year contracts. Now we're not outsiders. Now we're not people that are trying to invade. Now we are on the roster, much to promoter Timothy Embler's chagrin. That's what I'll be doing. I think July 4th weekend. I want to say that show is July 6th or something like that. And then on social media, Quintessential Stud Muffin mostly. On X, the former Twitter, I am Stud Muffin Says. I'm very prevalent on there. Stud Muffin Says on X, but everywhere else by and large, I'm Quintessential Stud Muffin, like you see down there in the highlight or in the caption, the lower third. Um, so that's TikTok, that's Instagram, Threads, really anywhere, if your social media platform of choice, type in Quintessential Stud Muffin, good chance it's me. Pro Wrestling Tees, I have a couple of t-shirts up. There's going to be a third one joining soon. I'm on there. Joel Gertner is the page. If you want to get a cameo of me, but it could be a promo that I'm cutting on somebody with you, like alongside you, like you're telling me what you think of this person, so I should think that as well. I can also cut a promo on you. We can do anything you want on Cameo. And as it goes without saying, the price of the Cameo, $69. Uh,
You are a marketing genius. Don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise.
and gosh, I don't know. That's about it. I'm out there. I'm trying to be as much as possible a working actor, and auditions, callbacks, and on set life, and just because it's not wrestling doesn't mean I won't do it. Like we talked about before, I'm an actor at heart, a performer at heart. I wouldn't be doing professional wrestling, especially outside the ring as a manager and announcer, if I wasn't a performance artist. So that's what I'm trying to be, man. If I can be anywhere near this generation's Andy Kaufman, that's what I'm trying to do. So you'll see stuff like that on TikTok. I mean, I'll be doing eating challenges in retort to Duke the Dumpster Drosy. He'll challenge me to something and I'll try to take him on. And he's a much bigger kid than I am. But I do my best. I come close most of the time. I do scratch off lottery on TikTok, man. I unbox hot sauce. I'll do anything, man. I mean, it's down to almost upholstery. Like once it gets to upholstery, I'm not real handy, so I won't. But on TikTok, man, you'll find me doing anything. And yeah, I just try to keep it interesting, whether it's X or whether it's TikTok or whatever it is. I just try to show a little bit more of I get outside the quintessential stud muffin, a little bit. I'll revert back to quintessential stud muffin every now and again as a comfort zone, but I love to just let people know that I'm just trying to have a good time and live the dream and enjoy life and just have fun.
Well, I think it's fair to say that the stud muffin summer that we're getting of 2024, there will be enough opportunities. So I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of ways for people to see you, and many more come down your pipe. Um, Joel, I want to say thank you for allowing me this time again. With as busy as your schedule is, and with as much as you have to do, the fact that you were able to take time out for this, it does mean a lot. And I'm glad that you have the support of not just friends, but of your family, everything that you're doing, whether it be entertaining or just self improvement. You have more of a gas tank than I think some people may realize, and may you never explode.
I will try my
Anytime.
best. But thank you for having me, man. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for being interested. Thank you for inviting me. Um, I had a great time. It's been a lot of fun.
Likewise. And hey, if for any reason, if there's a reason you would want me on the show, or that's fine. I'm not gonna say no. Obviously, I'm not a wrestler, but and I have fallen on my face a few times for movies and such, so I am durable. But yes, let us hope that this is not the first time in 10 years that we have to talk to each other again. Let us keep in
For
touch,
sure.
and let us keep spreading as much goodness, positivity, and you know weird stories that we can.
Absolutely.
So thank you, everybody. Obviously, all of Joel's official socials will be able to be posted. You can go there, find out about what shows he's going to be on, whether it be television or in person at wrestling. And yes, all of us people in Jersey, I get the feeling we'll probably be checking out Assault, if nothing else, just because, hey, we like to see things and we don't like to travel too far. So for that, I hadn't really thought about a way to actually close these yet because again, it's the first one in a while, and obviously I have my thing that I say at Jabronis United because obviously the title Jabronis United I take it from Cheeky Baby, and so I always say this has been Jabronis United. Stay humble. I don't know how to end this, so the real first person to go ahead and be the interviewee. Could you inspire me something of a verbal nature to close out the show?
I could say, well, 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 don't consider this the end. It's just until next time, my friend. Don't cry because it's done. There will be another one. We'll do it again sometime soon, either on Earth or on the moon. But the one that comes most quick will be here on Earth and just as sick. Something like that. I don't know.
I know you were the guy to ask. I know. Better you than me, because I would have said something like, I once was a lady from Nantucket.
Those are good too.
Thank you, Joel. And to everybody else, exactly what he said.
It's only worth it if you work for it. It's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they hear me now. I won't stop till I wear the crown.